Welcome to Crash Course. Let's go to the thought bubble.
East Asia. First came the Shang, which were politically decentralized with an emperor ruling at top, and the warrior class was also the elite class of the Shang. Next came the Zhou, who were politically decentralized with regional feudal states ruled by nobles, using military power. And it was a bureaucratic, pyramidal structured government, with the emperor at top, and the emperor got his ruling power from the mandate of heaven, which stated that the emperor was given power by the gods to rule, and if he sucked, then the people had the right to overthrow him. Next came the Qin. Shi Huangdi unified China and created a strongly centralized government and established a strong bureaucracy and abolished feudalism. The Han increased power in the bureaucracy with a centralized government, with the strong emperor ruling at the top of the structure, and introduced the civil service exam, which created a highly educated government, and it was based off of merit. South Asia. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were both centralized. And in India, all of the government was based off the caste system with Aryans on the top. The Mauryan Empire was founded by Chandragupta and unified the majority of India and created a bureaucratic centralized government. The Gupta Empire imitated the political structure of the Mauryan Empire, except it was smaller and less centralized. Europe. Greece. Greece was politically decentralized with city-states, such as Athens and Sparta. Athens was democratic and education-based, whereas Sparta was a dictatorship and was military-based. Rome. First came the Roman Republic, and the Roman Republic was ruled by aristocrats and a senate, and different branches of government that was established by the Roman constitution. Next came the Roman Empire, which was led by the Emperor Augustus Caesar, and was bureaucratic with regional rulers using the Roman law code throughout. Middle East/Mesopotamia. Sumeria was the first true civilization and also a city-state. It introduced Hammurabi's law code. Nubia was a centralized monarchical government. Phoenicia was organized into city-states such as Carthage with an oligarchic government. Persians were a provincial administration with each province ruled by a satrap. Moving on to the Americas. The Olmecs were a mother civilization with a hierarchical government. The Chauvin is pretty unknown, however, it was an early form of theocracy with a ruler. Teotihuacan was an oligarchic government. The Maya were a monarchical government where kings served as priests. The Moche was a hierarchical, politically fragmented government.
From 600 to 1450 CE, many things happened politically in East Asia with the Tang and Song dynasties. The Tang and Song dynasties had a very centralized government which was focused on Confucian ideals. This consisted of a merit system in which leaders could be selected through the civil service examination. Next we have Japan. Japan was decentralized because it was spread across many different islands, making it hard to unify. Japan copied a lot of China's governments, including their Confucian ideals. Japan also used feudalism under the shoguns. The shoguns had most of the power, while the emperors were simply symbolic. Now we'll move along to the Ming Empire. The Ming Empire was China after the Mongols had left. The Confucian ideals and civil service exam were reinstated from before when the Mongols were there. Now we'll move along to South Asia with the Delhi Sultanate in India. It had an Islam minority ruling a Hindu majority. Also, it was ruled by a sultan. Next, we'll move on to Europe with the Byzantine Empire. It had centralized rule with a hereditary monarchy. In Western Europe, we had the Holy Roman Empire, which had feudalism, which was basically land for loyalty. In the 1400s, Europe became more powerful as we hadn't seen before in the past. Italy had many city-states, such as Florence, Milan, and Venice. We move to the Middle East with Islamic empires. We have the Umayyad and the Abbasid. Both of these empires had a centralized government and a military autocracy based on hereditary leadership. The Mongols were a pastoral nomadic group. The Mongols consisted of three khanates, first starting with the Yuan dynasty. At its head was Kublai Khan, and he outlawed Confucianism as well as the civil service exam. Many of the Chinese were segregated from the Mongols, and the Mongols took up the highest positions in government. The other khanate was the Golden Horde, which was in Russia and was headed by Batu. They made a feudalism system which took Russia apart from the industrialization of Western Europe later on. The last khanate we had was the Ilkhan Khanate, which was in the Middle East. This unified Iran after many years of political defragmentation. It was also a monarchy. Lastly, let's move on to the Americas. First, let's start off with the Incas, which were a centralized empire in South America. They had a class of nobles which were headed by a king and worshipped their ancestors. Last empire we're going to talk about is the Aztecs. They were a militant warrior tradition class and also had priests that headed the government. They relied on human sacrifice and had tributary city-states.
1450 to 1750, European countries came to resemble nation-states. Politically and administratively centralized political units with fixed borders emerged. Centralization allowed European monarchs to abandon the previous system of feudalism. England's Parliament established a constitutional monarchy where the monarch operated under law and in tandem with Parliament. Other major powers besides France, Spain, and Russia had absolute monarchies where the king was above the law and Parliament operated under the king. Absolutism was justified by the doctrine of divine right, which was best exemplified by Louis XIV of France. The English Bill of Rights was written, which caused Parliament to continue to grow stronger while the monarchy weakened. Middle East. The sultans adopted the circle of justice ideology and ruled with the help of elaborate bureaucracy, which was headed by a grand vizier and staffed by lesser viziers and provisional. Songhai's ruler came to throne by overthrowing the previous monarch. He expanded boundaries, centralized his power by creating a complex bureaucracy, and sponsored art, scholarships, and the building of mosques. When Portugal invaded Congo, Congo leaders converted to Catholicism, took European names, and gave Portugal favorable trade terms and the right to use their ports, which in turn enriched its ties with Portugal and strengthened the state. Ashanti Kingdom became powerful because its leaders sold gold and slaves to Europeans in exchange for muskets and gunpowder. The Mughals centralized India and turned landowning Zamindar class into regional governors and bureaucrats. Descendants of Chinggis Khan established the Mughal Empire, and South Asia was united under a single government, which was very rare. Mughals were Muslim rulers of the empire, and the rule reached its peak under Akbar the Great, who used gunpowder and carried out centralization. English influence increased, and it became a weak colonial possession. They developed bureaucracies capable of conscripting large numbers of soldiers. However, most fell under European colonial control. Spain and Portugal were more direct in controlling their colonies than England and France. French and British colonies had more decision-making on the local level. Asia, China grew politically stagnant. From 1560 to 1615 involved the reunification of Japan. The emperor remained a figurehead, and autocracy increased under the shogun.
From 1750 to 1900, it was a great era of independence movements. In the Americas, the United States gained independence and became a federal constitutional republic. Haiti went through a revolution and set up a free republic. Argentina gained independence but dissolved into political chaos. Chile gained independence. Mexico gained independence and set up a monarchy, which was quickly overthrown and replaced by a republic. Brazil gained independence and set up a monarchy, and the Confederation of 1867 united Canadian provinces to create the Dominion of Canada under a constitutional democracy. In Europe, one of the most important independence movements was in France. France was originally set up into the Estates General, which consisted of the clergy in the first estate, the nobles in the second estate, and everyone else in the third estate. After the French Revolution, though, Napoleon overthrew the Republic of France and put into place a popular authoritarian regime. Also in Europe, there was an emergence of unification movements, two of the most important being in Italy, where they became an aristocratic monarchy, and Germany, where they unified under King Wilhelm I and Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire was a sultanate, and it had control over Egypt under Muhammad Ali. Later, the Young Turks drafted a constitution, but it was suspended by Abdul Hamid II. In Russia, they were ruled by a czar under an autocratic monarchy. At this time in Asia, the Qing dynasty was in control of China, and they set up an absolute monarchy. In Japan, the Tokugawa shogunate took control in 1600. They were later overthrown in 1868, and they were replaced by the Meiji Restoration, which was an oligarchy. In Africa, Shaka Zulu created the Zulu Kingdom in 1818 and split everybody into military regiments. After the creation of the Zulu Kingdom, there was a spur of creation of other kingdoms as well. For example, there was the creation of the Swazi Kingdom and the creation of the Lesotho Kingdom. In Western Africa, the conquering of the Hausa states created the Sokoto Caliphate. Zanzibar came under control of the Oman Sultanate. Tipu Tip created a personal empire based off of ivory trade, and there was also the creation of the Asante Kingdom. At this time, India also came under control of the British Raj. During the scramble for Africa, Ethiopia was the only country to maintain its independence, and Menelik became the emperor.
Aristocracy. And after the Mexican Revolution, the Constitution of 1917 was written, which promised universal suffrage and a one-term presidency. In Brazil, Getulio Vargas staged a coup and became dictator of the Estado Novo. Later, as a response to the Cuban Revolution, Brazil's military suspended the Constitution and instituted a conservative dictatorship. Cuba, on the other hand, underwent a major social change through a socialist revolution where Fidel Castro had set up a socialist one-party state. All in all, throughout the 20th century, South America has been plagued with political instability. The South Asian subcontinent gained its independence during this time. The British partitioned it into the new nation state of India, Pakistan, and East Pakistan. And in India, it was set up as a secular federal republic. At first, the absolute monarchy of the Qing, and which later became a constitutional monarchy in 1912, were the ruling power in China. But then after Sun Yat-sen founded the Republic of China, that was the status quo, up until Mao's communist forces overwhelmed the Kuomintang and sent them into Taiwan. And after that, China became the People's Republic of China and established a communist state. Before World War II, Japan was a constitutional monarchy where the emperor was revered as a deity. But then after World War II, a new Japanese constitution with American help was drafted, where the powers of the emperor were severely limited, and it became morely a figurehead. After World War II, the Korean peninsula was occupied by the Soviets in the north and the Americans in the south. To this day, North Korea is a single-party socialist totalitarian state. South Korea is a unitary presidential constitutional republic. In Germany, after World War I, the Weimar Republic was established. When Hitler became chancellor in 1933, he established the Third Reich, a totalitarian autocratic regime. After World War II, Germany became East and West Germany, controlled by the Soviets and Americans respectively. They reunified in 1990. Russia was a Tsarist regime up until 1917, when they were overthrown by the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks founded a socialist state led by Lenin and then Stalin. After that, it was dismantled when the Russian Federation became a federal republic. The Middle East had a number of new nation-states created and kingdoms. Iran was controlled by the Shahs, or like a monarchy, but after the Iranian Revolution, it became a theocracy led by the Ayatollah Khomeini. Africa during the 20th century, they were freed from their colonial masters, but most of them ended up going through political instability.